To add further into our awesome videos about countries and cultures, I take a unique spin on these videos and do a good old-fashioned what-if scenario. And in the past, I've looked at the great country of Belgium and the amazing culture from Luxembourg, and have noticed that the two have a very linked history. But today I ask the question, what would happen if these two countries joined together? Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome to FTD Facts, the channel where I look at people, cultures, and places from all around the world. My name is Dave Welple, and thanks for joining me here today. Now, we are going to look at these two countries, and we're going to put them together and see what would happen. Now, like all the countries of Europe, there's a lot of bleeding of culture that goes into every single nation. For example, both of these countries were actually a part of the Carolingian Empire until 1843, which basically that's when the Holy Roman Empire came in and split the region of Belgium, which was put into West and East Francia. Of course, for this, I'm just going to go into a little bit of history about these two because they kind of have been together but separate in the past. Because later on, Belgium became under the rule of the Netherlands and Luxembourg were under French rule. But however, by the 1800s, both of these countries didn't really want to do this, and they were like, no, we're going to go and do our own thing, thank you very much. And with this in mind, Belgium got its independence in 1830, however, Luxembourg got it shortly before in 1815. This happened shortly after the Napoleonic War, in which Luxembourg became the Grand Duchy of Luxembourg, which was within the German Confederation. Belgium, of course, around that time became part of the Netherlands, but like I said, it was about 15 years later in 1830, they were like, nope, we don't want to be part of the Dutch. Which, by the way, I just want to make a mention that I also have a lot of people from the Netherlands watching these videos, so, you know, sorry, Dutch. It's not me. It was the Belgians back in the day. They had a problem with the Netherlands. I don't know what it was, but something. But anyways, let's get away from history and let's look at what would happen today if these two were brought together as one independent nation. Of course, for this, I'm talking about Luxembourg as a country, not the southern area of Belgium known as Luxembourg. And this is basically kind of like my theme of the country, because when I saw Luxembourg, I'm like, wait a minute, there's two Luxembourgs? That is really confusing. And of course, there's the big thing called Benelux, which I'm going to get into this video, which already exists. However, if these two were one, well, Belgium has a population of approximately 11,420,163 people, ranking 80th in the world. Now, guys, that is just an approximation. I don't know if they actually get down to the exact number. Hopefully, there's nobody living illegally within these countries, but you just never know. Luxembourg, however, has a much smaller population of 602,005 people, basically making this country rank 169th in the world. As a matter of fact, some cities have more of a population than this entire country. There's nothing wrong with that. As a matter of fact, Luxembourg does a lot for the global economy, even with such a small population. However, together they would rank 77th in the world, being right under South Sudan, with a combined population of 12,022,168 people. Again, that's just an approximation. Just saying. Land size, let's take a look as well. Now, Belgium itself is approximately 30,528 kilometers square, where Luxembourg is only 2,586.4 kilometers square. And currently, right now, Belgium sits at like 137th in land size, and that wouldn't change even if Luxembourg joined it, or if they joined Luxembourg. I don't know how it works. Either way, their total combined size would be approximately 33,114 kilometers square. But now, one of the biggest questions is the kind of government that would happen and the amount of control. There would be a lot of major what-if scenarios here. Basically, both countries are classified as parliamentaries, but however, Luxembourg is a unitary parliamentary, where Belgium is a federal. Unitary means that the government pretty much makes all the major decisions, and in a federal type of parliamentary or any form of government, the state and provinces have their own constitutional protected sovereignties. And of course, they share their certain rules and regulations with the central form of government, but they have the final say. At least in some fields. I mean, certain things, they're different. But however, one of the biggest problems that we would look at when it comes to these two countries coming together would be the idea of the monarchs. What do you do with them, because each country has their own? For Luxembourg, they have Henry ruling as their monarch, and Belgium has Philippe. And deciding what to do with these two monarchs would be a very tough thing to do, because it would be the question of who has more power, who has less power. I mean, do they get rid of the monarchs altogether? And of course, there is the theory that one could get abolished and one could come in as rule. But however, because these two have a good relationship, I wouldn't be surprised if this did happen, that the country would have what is known as a diarchy. Basically meaning that there are two monarchs for the one country. Keep in mind, you might think that that's really weird. This does exist in certain countries today. Some of these countries are Andorra, Bhutan, and of course there is Ireland, San Marino, and Swaziland. Now, one thing that really wouldn't change, and I mean, I'm looking at the things that would change and the things that wouldn't, is money. Money would pretty much stay the same, simply because both of these countries already use the euro, so nothing would really change there. But of course, Belgium and Luxembourg are both powerful nations within the European Union. So there could be the question of whether or not this country adopts its own form of currency. You got countries like Sweden, which they use the krona, but they are part of the EU. And considering we're on the topic of money, let's look at the gross domestic product. I like to use the purchasing power parity because it's a good way to compare nations that are from all around the world. Basically, Belgium's GDP purchasing power parity comes in at $550 billion, ranking 38th in the world, while Luxembourg has a GDP of $70.926 billion, ranking 70th. Of course, combined, you would think that that would come into 620 GDP, but it might not because there's a lot of trading going back and forth, but there kind of isn't. This is where it gets a little tricky. So normally with these videos, I do like to take a look at the amount of trading that goes back and forth because sometimes there's sale taxes and certain things like that. And if they're all under one country, they would no longer theoretically be trading to each other. They would be trading within their own country, so it wouldn't really count. But the hard part is with EU countries comparing to each other is some countries have very good tax deals with each other. Some countries don't even have taxes with each other. Some have higher taxes. It's all dependent on the country. For example, in history, especially when it comes to these two countries, there was a thing called the BLEU, which was the Belgium-Luxembourg Economic Union. And this was actually somewhat a precursor to the Benelux Union, which currently exists. And the Benelux Union is the combination of these two countries with the Netherlands as well. Which, by the way, Benelux on its own is a very fascinating union that I think that we should look at. And if you guys just want like a video on 10 awesome facts about Benelux, just hit that like button and I will look into it. Because one of the fascinating things about the Benelux system is it's sometimes seen as a form of government. This is because it has its own form of parliament and it has its own form of legislature. As a matter of fact, the entire GDP of the Benelux comes in at $1.501 trillion, and it even has its own official and minor languages. So it's kind of like, is it a government? Is it its own country sort of thing? Some people identify it as that. Now, just side scooting over the Benelux system, if you look at Belgium and Luxembourg, they're generally thrown together all the time. As a matter of fact, here on the channel, when I look at trading, I like to use the OAC because it gives generally pretty good statistics of trading back and forth between two countries. The thing is, Belgium and Luxembourg are already thrown together into one big nation. And with that, the exports of this country in 2016 were $325 billion. The biggest of these are cars at 6.9%, you've got diamonds at 5.8%, and of course refined petroleum at 5.6%, and packaged medicaments at 5.3%. Good old refined petroleum and packaged medicaments. They're in every single export for every single country, pretty much. On the flip side, though, when you look at their imports, they import a lot more than they export. For example, their imports sit at $381 billion, and oddly enough, cars, which come in at 8.1%, and of course you got those packaged medicaments again at 5.9%, and of course 4.0 is refined petroleum, and 4.1% is diamonds. Also, one big thing that would change, it actually wouldn't, and it would be religion, because religion, they're both big on Roman Catholic, so it's, it's kind of their thing. I'm not much of a religious person. I mean, you might be watching this video, but that's kind of a good thing, is that their big religions are the same, so there wouldn't be anybody like, hey, we should have these churches, now we should have these ones, that sort of thing. However, let's move right along and let's look at military because, I mean, they're quite different. And with that, let's just mention the fact that when it comes to the rules and regulations of these militaries, well, first of all, both countries, all their military people are all classified as volunteers, and to date, there is no form of conscription that is currently happening in either country. However, with that, Belgium has a total personnel of 38,800 people, and Luxembourg has a total population of approximately 1,000 troops. Combined, obviously, this only comes in at 39,800 individuals. Side note, when it comes to these countries, both of them rely quite a bit on other nations that are within the EU for defense. Both rely on Germany quite a lot. Of course, you've got Luxembourg that goes, hey, Belgium, can you back us up quite a bit? But however, one difference is that Belgium does have a very active military that is broken off into many different departments. And just trying to combine these two nations together when it comes to military, Belgium pretty much offers the most amount of gear. Basically, for their aircraft, they would have a total of 167 with approximately 45 fighters. You'd also have 50 transports. On top of that, you also have 108 helicopters. However, 35 of these helicopters are considered attack helicopter craft. Combat tanks is a very interesting thing. There wouldn't be much of a change here even if they joined because both of them do not have any treaded tanks. I believe Belgium might have some in storage, but currently in active duty they do not use them. Like many other countries within Europe, they've gotten rid of a lot of treaded vehicles simply because there's a lot more urban combat that's going on, so they used wheeled ones instead. And with that being said, their wheeled infantry fighting vehicles come in at quite a bit at 662. Lots. Self-propelled artillery, of course, comes in at 0. Artillery itself comes in at 0. And of course, they do not have any rocket projectors. Navy assets, though, this is also an interesting one because they got a really small amount. Putting them together, this country would have a total of 17 Navy assets, 0 aircraft carriers, only 2 frigates approximately, 0 destroyers and corvettes, 0 submarines, and 2 patrol craft. On top of that, this country would have 6 mine warfare vehicles. And as for budget, if these two were to join forces combined, they would have a military budget for this nation of 5.79 approximately plus billion dollars. Also, if these two countries joined, I'm not sure how much of that percentage of military would stay. One thing that you could look at and say is currently right now for both countries, the amount of GDP that is spent on the budget for the military is well below the recommended 2% that is for all of European countries. However, most countries in Europe do not get to the 2%, so it's not really a big deal. So there you have it, guys. That is a numerical statistic sort of look at what would happen if these two nations decided to come together. Again, I didn't really want to get into the cultural aspect of things because, to be perfectly honest, they already share quite a bit of culture together. But however, if you know something that would change, let me know down there in the comments section below. And by the way, before you guys get out of here, if you guys are liking these videos and you're from Belgium or you're from Luxembourg and you want to learn more about your own individual countries, well, in this video, I've put some cards up that you could check out the playlists that are around these two particular nations. I'll also put it in the description box below, and I'll put it in the end of this video so you guys can check it out. They're really cool playlists. I really do like them. So anybody from Belgium generally wants to learn from their own country, so I put it in a nice playlist so you can see all of our Belgium-themed videos and vice versa for Luxembourg. But anyways, guys, I'm out of here. My name's Dave Walpole. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I will see you guys later. All right, so here's those playlists that I was telling you about. Feel free to check them out, but thanks for watching. Hit that subscribe button, by the way, if you guys like learning about what we do. Generally, we do a lot of like top 10 videos and things like that about countries and people and all that sort of stuff. So feel free to join us. We'll see you later.